This is Manwara Ali. Welcome to another conversation, a culture conversation on this Sunday, lovely Sunday evening in London. And I've got a wonderful guest with me, Lola, who's going to join me in a minute. Just a short introduction for my new connections, anyone who's following me right now, either on my YouTube channel or my LinkedIn, an introduction about what I do. So, I am a leadership coach, consultant, and a mentor. Lots of titles on my profile, but just in a nutshell, the number of things I do. I run a leadership program about 2, 3 times a year, specifically focused at working with women in leadership and unleashing their potential to grow communities and to actually focus on legacy. So, my framework is legacy. How do you change communities and how do you grow communities as a community leader? So, that's one thing I do. Apart from that, I'm also a chief executive of a small charity in East London called Wolfram Forest Community Hub, a wonderful charity. And we do a lot of work around tackling isolation and working with young people, engaging them, empowering them, as well as working with older people. We provide an independent housing advice service as well. So that is something that I do where I am employed as the chief exec. Apart from that, I am also a director of a CIC called Stowe Inspire. As part of that, I do a lot of charity work, and that's something that I do on a I'm passionate about, and a lot of it is around empowering young women and supporting women that are in very vulnerable situations abroad. So we raise funds and we help turn shelters into homes for them. Aside from that, I also set up a international initiative last year, and that initiative is the Ma Learning Center, which I was hoping to do in a few years' time, but I set it up when I was in Bangladesh in December, and that's just very early stages. I have sewing classes for women in the village to help them to learn life skills that will then enable employability. So that's what I do as well. So those are all the things, but I'm going to call Lola in because I know she's waiting impatiently and I'm so looking forward to this conversation. So Lola, are you in the house?
I'm in the house. I'm in the house, Mama. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
And it's Lola. You said it right the first time, then you retracted back to Charlie and Lola,
Oh
Lola.
no, sorry, it's just bad habits.
That's okay. That's okay. That's
Lola.
okay. Yes, that's me. Somewhat.
Yeah, so Lola, I've been following you for months. I'd say at least over a year, maybe a year and a half, and it feels like we kind of know each other. There's a lot of things that resonate and we have in common. The connection is definitely there, but it'd be wonderful for you to introduce yourself.
Okay, so hello, everyone. My name is Lola Bejide. I'm an early career strategist and first level leader coach as well. So, in essence, what I do, I help individuals and organizations who are looking at growth and development for their entry talent. So I go in and help them to ensure that one, they really have that framework to help all entry talent get equitable opportunities to progress, they feel a sense of belonging, and they're able to thrive within the organization. I also do career coaching, group career coaching for entry talent as well, just to help them be the architects of their career when they do enter the workspace, because it's such a big transition from academia into the workplace. And if you haven't had work experience, and I don't mean an internship or a spring week, I mean proper work experience, it can be quite daunting. And particularly for certain demographics, it can be even more so. So I go in to ensure that they are fully equipped to thrive within their first roles. And as a first level leader coach, I really do support first level leaders to build equitable and inclusive cultures. So that's working with organizations and again, individuals via a group, via a club, which is the Bold Leadership Club, because it's very easy to adopt practices that you have seen that have been established within an organization. But as we know, times change and you need to update and equip yourself with leadership skills that are going to be equipped to build inclusive cultures, particularly as we live in such a diverse society at the moment. So that's what I do. Along with yourself, I do have a few other hats. So I'm also a governor at a primary school. I'm the chairperson on finance. I'm also the governor for anti-racism. And I'll do mentoring for women in business, just as it's my passion. I want to see more of us thrive in the space, and also mentoring entry talent as well. So those are my various hats, as well as obviously wife, mother, sister, daughter, friend. But yes, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And don't we just love doing?
We do. We are doers. We are doers. Doers with passion. Doers with passion is what we are.
I think we're doers, but I think we're also thinkers.
Oh, you have to be. There's no point just going in aimlessly without any strategy or plan. Or like you said, I love the essence of a legacy. You have to go and what impact. I'm very impact driven. What impact do you want to make? So as well as being a doer, I think past that. Like after I've done, what's the impact? What's the legacy? How is it going to make improvement? And then what can I do to even improve what I've done? So a continuous learning cycle to always improve and help others improve as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. Hi, Laura. We've got Laura who's joined us.
Hi, Laura.
Just says hello. Anyone listening, if you have anything you want to add or questions you want to ask Lola, please feel free, or myself. But we're just gonna go with the flow. I was just listening to what you said, and I was thinking, like, culture is such a complex thing, and it's, if you think about it, something that Catherine said at last Sunday's like when we were talking last Sunday, and she said it's just the way we do things. If culture is the way we do things, as a leader, how you do things at home is going to be very similar to how you do things within the workplace, right?
Yeah.
Because we're leaders at home. Women are leading families,
Yeah.
parenting children. So we are naturally already in leadership roles, and yet you will see that a lot of women won't feel comfortable to step into leadership titles, and you will see them that they sometimes, I've seen in work environments, including myself, where I've done everything and been the right hand for the person in charge. Yeah, I won't be
the person in
that
charge.
role. Too scary.
The thing is, it's very much sometimes a mindset that sometimes we don't feel as well we either deserve it or we haven't got all the skills that we need. And an interesting fact, because I also do a workshop called The New Bold, which is targeted at females within the workplace. And the reason why I formulated that is I noticed particularly, and now initially I thought it was just, I thought it was the entry talent and the rising talent who struggled, but then it went across the board. And it was a case of we always sell ourselves short. So a clear example is when you see a job and you think, oh, actually, and you look at the job spec, everything that you need, everything that they're asking for, which in essence is a wish list by the prospective employer, and you think, oh no, I can't apply for it because I can only do 80% of what they want. Meanwhile, you are perfectly equipped to learn on the job. You have the intelligence, you can hit the ground running, all those lovely terminologies, but yet you don't put yourself forward. In comparison, a male colleague would look at that same job description, and so long as they can do probably 60%, if that, they will apply for that role because they know they can learn on the job. And really and truly, as long as you can do, the must-haves, everything else, like, nice to have, desired requirements, you learn on the job. But we will not put ourselves forward because we feel, well, actually, I'm not quite sure if I can. And it's very much, we have to really believe in ourselves and our abilities a lot more, I feel, and stop selling ourselves short. So the framework that I use, which runs through all of my deliveries, is BOLD. And BOLD is my framework for brave enough to be me, owning my value always, leaning into my greatness, developing self and others. And when you utilize that framework, you understand that actually I have enough within me to do this role and to do it really well. And also not waiting to be asked, putting ourselves forward for leadership roles. So when someone's saying, oh, you're doing such a great job, that's great. So I actually want to go to the next level. What do I need to do? So people say, oh, your opportunity will come knocking. Go and knock on, create your own opportunity. Be an opportunity creator. If you want a job, write out your ideal job role. I've done that before. I've literally created my job role and said, this is what I want to do. And they created that role because it was needed. So it's very much about having that self-belief within yourself. And also, you may be the only female within that environment, but make it your own. I see so much, because my background was in investment banking and business management. And it was very much, oh, I'm not quite sure if I can do that. And it was male dominated and quite aggressive. And there are some women who just thought they had to adorn this masculine armor to show that they can be a leader. And like there's enough of me to be a leader. I don't need to pretend to be some sort of masculine Adonis. I don't need all these bullish behaviors. There's enough within ourselves to be leaders, to be female leaders authentically. And I think we have to really cherish that and promote it even more, as opposed to think we have to be more aggressive, we have to be more this, we have to be more that. Be you, because you are enough. And I think that's a message that we need to feed far more into corporations, and particularly when we're looking at, what does a leader look like? When they look at leaders, it's usually, oh, you have to be this, you have to be that. Not necessarily. And that's a lot to do with culture. Culture will dictate what a leader should be. And if that doesn't align to how you are naturally, you feel you're not a leader. Meanwhile, the parameters of what a leader is so broad and vast. So broad and vast. You just have to think, I have the capability to be a leader and still be me. I don't need to change who I am. I will still develop myself, but I don't need to shed my current character and adopt another one.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that, with your the bold you talked about, and the D, and what that
Yes.
represents, developing self and others. And I was just thinking about the current culture in a lot of organizations where they're really struggling to address equity, diversity, and inclusion. And, organizations that have in particular become very stagnant. And your perspective on that the last bit that you cover in your own program, developing self and others, because I actually recently in an interview put that question to somebody, like, how do you develop yourself, or what is your own approach towards your own learning, what your plans for the future? And that gave me an insight. The answer gave me an insight as to whether that person focuses on their own personal development, because within work environments I have found where a person does not focus on their own learning and development, they will never recognize that need in others
Elsewhere.
Yeah.
That is very, very, very true. Very true. And also sometimes you have people who only focus on their own personal development, and they don't give scope or guidance, particularly as a leader, they don't give guidance as to the areas of development that some of their team could require. So I see it very much as, what is your mindset? Either you have an abundance mindset whereby you want everyone to grow, you want everyone to develop. So as you're growing and developing, you're thinking, right, okay, how can I help Catherine? How can I help Laura? How can I help Monroe? Okay, I think you're good at this, but you just need a bit more development in this area. So as you're assessing yourself, will you build everyone else up with you? Because then what you get is such a high impact team. Whereas if your mindset is, I'm just going to develop myself and that way I'm able to go up the ladder, what about the people that you're currently working with? So the knowledge gap becomes wider, because you are increasing your knowledge base, your skills bank, but the other people who you're there to help and guide, they're not getting that. and the knowledge that you are absorbing, you're not sharing either. So the gap becomes wider and wider, and that will create tension and pressure within the team, because you feel you're not up to it, you're not doing your job, you haven't got enough skills, but you're not giving any guidance. So you're developing yourself, but you've forgotten about the others. And for me, that's always a very key theme as a leader. It's look at the holistic framework of being a leader. I believe very much in servant leadership approach. It's like, how are you serving your team? Because if you are just serving yourself, then you're not actually a leader, because no one is following you. Okay, you're seen very much as, I will go and sort myself out, Jack. Everyone else, you're on your own. And I feel that in that sense, you're letting yourself down and you're letting your team down. So, and that's why I purposely looked, when I was doing Bold, I said developing self and others, because you have to build everyone up. And it's not that you're writing out the personal development plan, but you're actually empowering them to see their areas of development as an opportunity for growth. Because sometimes when it's communicated, you're like, well, these are your weaknesses. And immediately that's a very closed approach, because you're basically saying to someone, you're not good enough. If you're saying your areas of development, it's like, I want you to develop. It's very positive, it's very open, and it's people embrace it more. And then in so doing, again, you're building up your team, because no one is indispensable. We say that when you are leading a team, you should be looking at your succession planning. Yeah, because you want to move on. So do you want to leave the team in disarray, or do you want it to be, it's right for picking who could be the next leader, because you've all got the right skill set? So it's over to HR, it's over to someone, but whilst I've been your leader, I've invested in your development.
I have a philosophy around that. So, what you just said, really powerful. But my philosophy is that you cannot grow unless your people grow.
Yeah.
And your people cannot grow unless you grow.
Yeah.
Because my own personal experience, I think a few years back, like I felt like I went stagnant. And I found that people that I was leading were not growing. I kept saying to myself, why aren't they? Why aren't they? But then I realized it's because they need to see me achieve. They need to see me grow, because they're looking up to me, right? I'm leading the way. If I'm not leading by example, what message are they getting? It's okay. And actually, there's no such thing as perfection anyway. There is no end road.
Progress. It's just
Yeah, there's
progress.
no end road. Wherever you get to, there's still further to go.
Yeah, and it's like you said, that within a team, if you're not prioritizing your development, they will take it as a message that development is not a priority for the team. So as you're not prioritizing it, they too will not prioritize it. And like when you're having one-to-ones, one of the things I say within the Launchpad program, which is the leadership program, is during your one-to-ones, how many times do you ask them about their personal development plan? How many times have you asked them what they're doing? Because then they know it's intentional. It's not just a mid-year and end-of-year conversation. Because by that time, it's usually too late. It should be something that's factored in to your one-to-ones. What are you doing? It could be even just shadowing another colleague, but it's something that should be integral to your communications with your team members, because then they will know it's a priority for you. And again, that's all about building a culture where everyone is able to thrive and everyone has equitable opportunities for progress. And for me, that's very, very key, because when you have that within a culture, it does become inclusive, not exclusive. It's only the same people who are getting the same opportunities for secondments to lead a project. You need to build equitable opportunities for progress, and that helps build an inclusive environment.
And would you say, what would your take be on, especially in charities or maybe voluntary organizations, where money is quite limited? What would you say? Because, like you could have a development program, but no budget.
That's always going to be a tough one when you're looking at the first sector, because money is so tight. But in the same vein, if you want your charity to grow and make impact, you need high performing individuals. So whether that's making it a priority and applying for more tenders, for more grants for development, looking at whether you can work with another charity, so whether you buy a license and you share the users between yourselves. You have to find ways to ensure that development of team members is fundamentally on the table. Because like you said, if you're stagnant, your team is stagnant, what's going to happen to the charity? If the lead is stagnant, the team is stagnant, the charity is not going to fly. It doesn't make sense. It's like maths, isn't it? 1 + 1 would equal 2. You can't have minus negative plus minus negative equals 5. It's not going to happen. So, you really do need to make that investment. And it may not be as, buoyant as what you want, but there has to be something there where they will be able to see that actually development of individuals and our leader is a priority for our charity. And this is the reason why. I'm very much a believer of, you can have a personal development plan, but if you don't understand why you're doing it or what the impact is going to be, it's futile. So when you see there's a problem within the charity, whatever it may be, and you're like, well, actually, maybe if you've got more training on marketing, then we'll be able to do X, Y, Z. Then we could get more revenue in, and then we're able to meet the targets of these projects. Oh my gosh, yeah, okay. How can we find the most cost-effective, marketing course? Yeah, you have to find a training company to meet your budget, and some training companies do offer discounts for charities. So it's very much being proactive, not just thinking, oh well, we've got no money, so we can't do any training.
Yeah, no, I've always prioritized wherever I've worked. I've prioritized the development of teams I've worked with. I'm going to say something controversial. I'm quite opinionated. I'm opinionated, and I think most people who've been following me know me by now. And I'm going to say that organizations or certain companies deliberately do not invest in their leadership because they are afraid if they do, they will fly. I seriously believe that. I actually do. I have sensed in workplaces I've worked where people have been quite reluctant to invest in certain individuals' development because, okay, if they grow, they'll move on, and we've spent so much money, time, and energy on this individual, and we're going to lose them. But my personal experience has been where people feel valued because
You will
you are
stay.
investing in them, they tend to stay.
They will stay. And in this day and age, no one's staying with one company for life. So eventually they're going to leave. So you can either have them leave disgruntled, and then I'm sure everyone's heard of, silent resignation and everything else. But if you invest in them, they're going to want to give you, they're going to want to give you 100% value add into the organization. So you will get a return on your investment, as opposed to, they come to you and ask for, a development plan that, please, I want to do this course, this is how it's going to help the business. And you're just like, no, I can guarantee you're going to start getting the bare minimum from that person. You will start getting the bare minimum. But if you actually invest in them, they're going to feel, okay, I'm valued and I want to give value back. So everything that they learn, they're going to share. They're going to really want to demonstrate this was a worthwhile investment for the organization. And eventually they are going to leave. Maybe they will stay with you because they're going to go further up the ladder, but they may actually want to leave, and that's fine. It's a big old world. You're allowed to leave an organization then, like you said, they're going to feel valued. And where you feel valued, you feel a sense of belonging. Where you feel a sense of belonging, you're more likely to stay. Where you feel undervalued, you don't feel a sense of belonging, because then you think only certain people are being valued, and then you don't feel a sense of belonging, and then you leave. So it's a very simple equation in my books. Invest in your people, let them grow and develop, and they will give extra value back to your organization. Don't invest in your people. They won't feel valued, and they will leave disgruntled.
I love that equation thing that you've just, shared with us. It just sounds so right. And one of the things I've like always tried to, and I don't even know, I wasn't trained or it certainly wasn't any of my leadership training, but I've always found coaching and mentoring approach when you are line managing, when you are leading others, to be a really, really good approach, as opposed to focusing on, like, the targets. And as a mother with young children, I wouldn't have stayed in the job I was in for so long had my employer not been flexible. So
Mm,
I always have this view that, and that's just me. And I know that when I talk to more and more, like, people that are into innovating, that, it's okay to be like that. But I know that I have a philosophy, and that is, if you are going to do a job, I don't need to tell you that you need to do it within the 3 hour schedule or whatever. Even as far as I'm concerned, you can be flexible with your time. And
mm,
there will be people that will do the same job in half an hour, and there'll be
yeah,
people that will take 3 hours,
yeah,
and are equally valuable. But also, someone who is very experienced can be like an octopus, and I get this, like, I've had people sending me messages today saying, Manmora, I hope you're going to rest. And I just feel like saying that, yes, I am going to be resting, but you have no idea how many teams are doing things for me all over, like in
yeah.
this country and abroad. Because I've played my role, and I can step back, and people are doing the bits that are giving them joy.
Exactly, and that's an important factor. And one of the things that, like yourself, I'm very, very passionate about and fully agree on is that as a leader, you also need to have capacity and ability to coach your team. And that's something that is usually overlooked, but it yields such great results. And it's not always easy, but I think when you have the skill set to do it, you will see the benefit of it, because the relationship that you build with your team, you get a better understanding of their strengths, their areas of development. You're able to suggest where further areas of development they need to focus on, but in a very positive manner, and really help support them to be the best they can be within their role. And sometimes that element is overlooked, and then you haven't got that rapport. So, like you rightly said, as a leader, you're able to decipher, actually, I can give this, to Monwara and she will get it done. I can give it to Lola and she will get it done, maybe in a longer time frame, but I'm going to get the quality output. But when you haven't got a coaching aspect, I've always found it to be quite hard to lead someone where I haven't had an element of coaching in factored in to how I lead, and how it builds a team culture as well, because then they get to see the benefits, and it's almost like train the trainer. So they're able
Mm.
to then coach the other junior members of staff that come in, and you're able to build a team that's very much, again, where development is at the forefront of that team culture. So that coaching element is always very strong for me, and it does yield results. And some people say, "Oh, but Lola, I'm not you. I'm not a coach." Everyone has the ability, if you want to make it if you want to be intentional about it. Everyone has the ability, and what you don't have, you have the ability to go on courses. I'm not asking you to go and do an ICF qualification, but there are so many skills that are probably overlooked as a coach. And when you look at being a coach and being a leader, you will see the similarities, and it will really help build up the team environment.
Wonderful. And that's all about culture. And you've just described legacy, because when we lead a certain way, like for me, very much coaching and mentoring is part of my leadership. You know,
Mm,
come with me, I will show you. That's the mentoring.
yeah,
The coaching is very much, you've got it inside you. Let's bring it out.
exactly.
You think about it. You tell me how you think. And I've often seen people that have coached and mentored in that way, where they've shown me that they're better than me, so much more better than me in some things, and yet
Yeah,
they don't have the confidence to believe that they can. Because sometimes especially in servant leadership, you can end up being put on a pedestal, and
Yes.
that can also affect team dynamics. So
Yes,
you
it can. And it's very important, like you said, to watch those dynamics and to ensure that each role is quite clear. And when it's done right, it's beautiful, because
need.
then you see, and again, as a leader, you think, actually, I want to serve my team. I want to serve my team, and it's not for praise and glory or whatever, but I want to serve my team because I know the fruits that it yields when you approach it in that way. Another thing I would say about culture, which is another one of the aspects I look into for a workshop, particularly as we look at diversity within the workplace, and as I said, entry talent or first level leaders. It's, for me, leaders understanding that certain demographics, they have cultural barriers to career progress. And if you're not aware of it, you won't know how to approach it, or you probably won't even recognize it. That's the first thing. So you may think, for example, now I will use my heritage as an example. If you've come over, let's say from Nigeria, and you've done your degree or your master's here, and then you go into the workplace, there's certain things culturally that within your household you just don't do. Okay, generally you may not disagree with your boss. You may not be too comfortable staring at them directly in the face. You may not be comfortable raising objections if they have, when they make a suggestion in a team meeting. So they will think, oh my God, Lola's, she doesn't really give much, does she? But what does she do? She's just always quiet. I mean, she'll knock out a good presentation, but she can't really deliver it with confidence. And she never challenges me. She will say, oh, that's not good. Or she'll say afterwards, or they will hear, well, I didn't think it would work. But she didn't say that in a team meeting. Why not? It's like, because culturally, we've been raised not to challenge our elders. And particularly even within the workplace, as an adult in Nigeria, it's very rare you would challenge your boss. Okay, so coming here where it's expected for you to be dynamic, and now actually, no, John, I don't think that's going to work. It doesn't happen. But if you've got an insight as to these cultural barriers, you're able, within your one-to-one, just say, actually, Lola, I noticed that, sometimes you don't agree with some points that I make, but you don't voice them. Please do, because I need to hear. We need to have input from the whole team. So if you're not comfortable saying in the meeting, just send me an email at first until you increase your confidence levels. Because what happens when that is not acknowledged is that people who are comfortable in challenging or, putting their, talking loud or putting their ideas forward, which is great, and this is no slight on them, they are the ones who'll be seen as the stars. Okay, so they will get those opportunities for progress, whereas those people who maybe are restricted by the cultural norms of their heritage will not be given, will not have that same access to opportunities or progress because they're seen as inadequate or they haven't got the skill sets. So it's really understanding sometimes there are cultural barriers to career progress. And when we're working within a very diverse team, it's really important that that is acknowledged and it's addressed in a very positive way, because then we're able to really build that equitable culture, which sometimes can be missing because you don't know what you don't know, right? But if you have knowledge that, oh, actually it's this, or it's that, then you can have that one-to-one conversations. You can literally just say, I know, from a cultural background, maybe this is not something that you're comfortable with, but there's always a way around it. And they're like, oh, okay, so I can share my ideas and my value added contributions will be noted. And you're helping to develop them as a coach to really draw out all the greatness that is within them.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Really glad, because I feel that, anyone leading a team is in a real position to make change in the culture within an organization. But I found that often people don't realize the influence they hold.
Yeah.
And with my perspective in the past, it was very much, okay, I need to speak for them, or I need to, make sure that they, are not, their voice is heard, until I realized that I shouldn't be speaking for them. I need to
Exactly.
make them feel comfortable. And that is not easy. If you want to achieve diversity, it's not even just about the racial differences.
Mm,
It's not even about the religious differences. Sometimes it's as simple as, okay, what generation are they? Because I had a staff member who said to me, like, over a year ago, said, but Manwara, you have to understand my kind of, work ethic and the way I've grown up on. I've always been led to believe, very much like what you said, that you do not challenge something
mm,
that is line managing you. Because I said,
mm.
why didn't you make a suggestion? Why didn't you like counteract or suggest alternative? Oh, but you simply don't do that. You do as your manager tells
Controlled.
you.
Yeah.
And I
And,
was like, why did, like, I would not have known, but if you don't have break that ice and don't
mm.
have that relationship, you don't develop that relationship, you're never gonna be able to, like, get to that point where someone feels comfortable enough.
And I think that's a very key part in terms of bringing that coaching aspect into leadership,
Mm,
because then that's how you do create that relationship. And applause to that young lady, because it's very rare they will voice that. They would rather just rather keep it quiet within themselves. And that's why I say it's very important to be aware of these cultural differences so you can help support them. And like you rightly said, find alternatives to help draw out all the value add until they are comfortable in saying it themselves, sending you emails. But there's always ways around it. And what that does, it sends the message that they are valued. They are very, very valued. And similar to Catherine's point with Asian teams, you have to understand the culture. And we
mm,
live in particularly when you have global teams, you really need to understand that not everyone has the same idea of what culture is to you. It's different around the world. And having that, what I would call cultural competency, you're then able to address these issues in a very inclusive way and in a very respectful way, because then you build trust. And
yeah.
once you build trust, you're able to get past these barriers. And I
Mm,
think sometimes we just think, well, I don't know, I've given them so many chances to speak up. They don't speak up, so obviously they've got nothing good to say. Well, no, actually, let's find another way, shall we? And
mm,
try and meet in the middle. And sometimes that gets overlooked. And then what you have is teams not flourishing
mm,
because they're not being coached, not being guided in the right way, and then their value gets overlooked, and then they're not able to progress. Then, to your point, they get stagnant. Then they
mm,
suffer career frustration, and then they probably leave. So
mm,
it's really important that these building blocks are there for leaders. And like I said, I'm very passionate about first level leaders, because you can sometimes, as a first level leader with no people management experience, you're just taking in what's the status quo within the organization. And that could have been a status quo that's been in situ for 10, 15 years. So it
mm,
doesn't take into account, equity, diversity, inclusion. So this is the way it's always been. Yeah, well, the world has moved on. So, perhaps we need to get with the times a bit more.
mm, mm. I was just looking at, hi Catherine. I was just looking at Catherine's comments, and
Mm,
it's she talks about cultural competence a lot, and I think, and hi Kate. Kate is also online now. It's really interesting because you've got all these big institutions like the Charities Commission, for example,
mm,
that wants to achieve equality or equity, diversity, inclusion. Yeah, even just to recruit someone and bring someone on board to do that job, they've got a panel of people that are maybe from generation whatever, and that generation used to lead, or the culture was very different. I'm probably going to be told off by certain people within my industry for saying what I'm saying, but I'm going to say it anyway,
go.
because I do think this is where the problem lies. We don't know what we don't know,
Hmm.
You don't know. Don't tell me what needs to be done to enable or encourage more Asian women to step up and lead when I, as an Asian woman, see no representation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why are you not employing, you pay thousands and thousands of pounds to consultants that come in, produce a report and leave because they can give you a report of what needs to be done. You've had millions of reports done over the last 50, 100 years, right? Nobody knows how to implement that report.
I
What
don't think
you
it's, I don't even think sometimes, Mara, sorry, I don't think it's always, they don't know how to. They haven't always got the drive to. And this, for me, this is a huge bugbear, which is why I like working with first level leaders, because I feel they are future, they are the future, to coin Whitney Houston, as it were. And if they have the skill set to build those inclusive and equitable cultures, they're changing the organization from almost, from mid-range up. Because when you get to leadership, and I always say this, if there are no targets, if there are no KPIs into how your recruitment is more inclusive and how it's more equitable, it's going to stay the same. There's no penalties if your pipeline is not more diverse. There's no penalties if your promotion round doesn't represent the whole organization. Okay, there's no one scrutinizing that. And until that's in place, they can do 110 reports. It's not going to change. It's not. They're going to have to be, I call it with smart intentionality. So using the SMART framework, but with intention. So when you've got, one of the posts that I did for International Women's Day is organizations, we know there's in this instance, let's say a gender pay gap. We also know there's an ethnicity pay gap. Do you publish that on your website? Do you share the data? Do you also share what your plans are to close that gap or at least to reduce it? Because if you're not doing that, you're telling me you're not intentional about this action. It only tells me you've got a brand campaign going on, that you want to be seen to be doing stuff. But I want to see data. I want to know that you are holding yourself to account to ensure this happens. Until then, it's just company brand rhetoric to make you look good. And this is what I always strive for. Like, give me your data. Oh, we haven't got it. Then you're not serious. Then you're not serious, and you're definitely not intentional. So let's stop playing. Let's stop playing. Everyone knows what needs to be done. Do you have the drive to make it happen?
Good point, and an important point. We might both get told off, but
I know. Now people know me. I'm like, see, I don't hold back. I don't hold back.
Well, the thing is, we're talking about culture. We're all banging on about how we need cultural change. We keep going on about cultural competency. And if you've got groups of people in leadership positions that are meant to move us forward, but they have no cultural competency whatsoever, they don't know how to, or maybe there's no intention there to change a report to create smart outcomes. And I would go one step further. Something I recently said to a public sector agency was, yes, you have a wonderful report and you have a great number of smart objectives, but are you going to share with us in terms of accountability and transparency how far you've got in 6 months' time?
Yeah,
Because
that's
that's what's
all it
really
takes. That's all it takes. You don't ever run a program, public sector or private sector, whereby you haven't got metrics in place. Okay, you always have a deadline when you aim to deliver. So if you've got all these what I call grandiose ideas and statements out there, can I see the metrics you're using to tell me your progress line? Are you red, amber, or green on this metric? Because if you can't tell me, that means that you're not monitoring it. If you're not monitoring it, then how do you know progress is being made? If progress is not being made and you're not monitoring if progress is being made, it's stagnant. There's no growth. You're not being intentional about this objective. You're just doing it as a marketing campaign, as far as I can see. And it's like you rightly said, it's like, please show me where you intend to be next year and what are you doing to achieve it. and who's being held accountable? Which member of your C-suite of Exco are you accountable to if this metric is not made?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Just something Kate says as well here about junior employees. I've seen this. This is very common where you see people in charge that don't have the cultural competency, yet they might have a couple of junior employees within their team who do possess the cultural competency, but they're not given the voice or the opportunity to have a say.
Oh,
Is
that's always from, and that's why sometimes I am a bit sorry, Kate, but I'm a bit hesitant about ERGs, because you're just getting people to work for free to help with your brand, but are you actually listening to what they're telling you? Are you giving them the power to make change?
that
Otherwise, they're more or less glorified poster boys and girls for your organization without bringing any real change into play. And it's like, they don't want to, either they don't trust them. And like I said, it could be a generational thing as well. And I'm very excited for the next 7 years when Generation Alpha come into the workplace. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a steep learning curve. They're very different in the way in which they communicate, in which what they value. These are little social justice warriors. You know, the children at the moment who are joining the teachers on strike. These are the people who will be in our workplace in the next 7 to 8 years. And we need to find a way to ensure they feel a sense of being valued or being heard, and that they can make change. They are impact drivers. That's what they are.
I think
And
you used a very important word, power, handing over power.
mm,
Because I think, like sometimes people in positions of power don't have the right solutions or don't even, they're clueless sometimes. And yet you've got the junior members, like Kate said, the young people, the next generation who can do it. So that was one of my intentions for creating this Young Inspirers thing. I've got a
mm,
team of 7 young people and they're fundraising, and they're putting together a women only event,
yeah.
a dinner and dance. But what's really interesting is when I said to them, you're going to make the decisions. I don't really want you to, at this stage, even include or involve your parents or your teachers or anyone, because I want you to make the decisions. It's almost like, but we don't know what to do with this power. We've been given it, and I've been in situations like that where people that I have said, listen, I want you to make the decisions, or I'm giving you the power. They don't, it's not normal. It's like Munwara needs to change because she doesn't know how to lead.
You see, the sad thing is how are we then growing a future generation of leaders? How are we then doing that? Are we waiting until, I don't know, they're in their 30s, until they're in their 40s, and then we think they're the right age to lead? You have to, it's not particularly, well, as mothers, I'm very much aware that I'm raising our sons to be leaders, and they have decisions that they make, rightly or wrongly, but you will learn. I say fail forward, just get over and done with and learn from it, and you move on. But when they're so oblivious to, oh my God, what am I going to do with this power? It's like, I don't know what to do, and it's panic. They're not in the right mindset to actually thrive. But when they see it as okay, let's sit down, let's analyze the situation, make a decision. If it's a great decision, wonderful. If it's wrong, you learn from it. Okay, so your next decision will be better. But for me, it's very important that, particularly entry level and rising talent within organizations, they are given the ability to make those decisions and learn. And part of the Launchpad program, which is for first level leaders, like, oh my God, Lola, we can't give them so much power. Like, I'm not saying they're going to be control of the finance of the organization. I'm not saying give them a £20 million budget, but there are certain aspects in which you can give them that autonomy to make a decision and explain it to the rest of the team. They can get challenged. They can answer questions as to why they think it's the right thing to do. But if you don't give them that exposure and that ability now, how are you building them up? How are you developing them? Because they have to elevate their thought process when you're making decisions to just completing tasks. So how are you creating that space for them to make that mental development in their head from, okay, I need to make a decision, I need to do the analysis, and I need to, I'm going to get questioned. It's like, where's that space going to happen? If you're not providing that space for them, when is it going to happen? And it's very similar to leaders. You've never had any people management responsibility, and as a first level leader, you're then given a team of 7 people to manage. I've never led anyone before in my life. And for me, I always say, whether you're a leader, a leader with authority, if you're on a team, you've got lateral management abilities. You manage up, you manage down. So you start building these from the get-go. And as a first level leader, if you've had that time in lateral management, managing up, managing down, you will find you're more comfortable managing people, even though this is your first time of being a leader. So now, before you was a leader without authority, now you're a leader with authority, but you're very comfortable in that space.
That's a really important point. One of the things I try and cover in the first module in my leadership program is that learning about yourself. Who are you?
Yeah.
Because if you're not self-aware and don't recognize your own strengths, weaknesses, and you're not actually, it's really hard then to lead others. And that is a really important point you made around when you do work with others, having those gaps. You then don't even recognize. And I think in the third sector, leaders are so busy doing, they don't make time for coaching and mentoring for their team because they don't understand it's such a huge investment. And I've met people that have come into leadership because they are doers, because they get the job done. But actually, sometimes it's sadly been the case that some of those gaps, or where perhaps they don't know how to lead people, has never happened because the investment hasn't been made by the organizations that have, employed them. So then you run the difficulty of those people transitioning. And this is where coaching is so important, I feel, because I've met so many people that are great at leading themselves, but don't understand why others don't follow. Because when you become better and better and better at doing, and an absolute expert, and you can fly through, like when I want people like that, I know who to go to because I want a job done really fast. But for me, the real challenge is creating teams and designing them. And I can quite easily see where the transition happened. Someone could be fantastic, managing an entire project on their own. But where the problems come and where sometimes the conflict comes is there's lack of self-awareness, how others are seeing them, how others are, feeling around them.
And there's also a lack of self-awareness. Because you're doing everything single-handedly, you're not quite aware of what your areas of development are, because you're having such limited interaction with everyone else. So, and then you feel the way you're doing it is the right way, and then you can become quite closed. And I say feedback is your gold dust to make you shine brighter. But when you're in that mindset of I can do everything by myself, when you do get feedback, you take it very personally. And you shut down that ability to actually grow and take the feedback as in, right, okay, I need to be better at communicating. I need to be better at delegating. So that's how you become so much of an avid doer, because you don't delegate and you get everything done yourself. You become a stickler. You become a stickler and you do everything yourself. You want everything to be perfect. As we know, there's no such thing as perfect, it's progress. But because you are so used to working, what's that lovely phrase? I can work independently. You then don't get the value of working within the team. And it's great, you can do it all by yourself, but there's going to be a point whereby you're going to have to work within a team or even lead a team. And you're not going to know how to do that. And that's why a lot of people who are promoted, because they get the program done on time, they do this, they do that, and you place them in a leadership position with a team, they're lost. Because they get frustrated because the people they're leading can't do things in 0.1 second and they can. And then they think that, oh, instead of training them, I'll just do it myself. But then your team is not growing. And then you are then doing all the work. You then get frustrated. You then start micromanaging people, and everyone starts to hate you because it's like, I'm not learning anything. I'm getting shouted at because I don't understand, but yet you're not teaching me, you're not coaching me to be able to do this task, and I have to do it your way or no way. And it's like, where's the growth? Where's the development?
Lola, I've been there.
No.
I've been there.
There you go.
So I know exactly what you're saying. I've been there, and I also more recently realized that feedback is something that when people transition from management or try to transition from management into leadership, it's the thing that most people find really uncomfortable to do. But the greatest possibility of growth comes from feedback.
Oh, of course,
And
without a
I
shadow of a doubt.
love feedback, but people I've managed over the years have found it really difficult to give me feedback. But a lot of it isn't, it's, and that's the power of awareness. Because we need to, and I'm very much into, okay, is someone an extrovert, introvert, like, what are their personality traits? I look at things like, okay, if someone's a nurturer, you need to deal with them in that respect. If someone's very closed, it's to do with their training, and you've got to work with them. You cannot use the same approach for, if you've got 10 different staff members, you can't use the same.
And you know what the thing is, more the greatest lesson that I had in terms of different styles of management for different people, I use my children as an example. So 3 boys, as we were saying, like, same mother, same father, totally different. I have to adopt my coaching style, my management style with each of them. And these are children that I raised, that came from me. So if I have to do it from them, how even more so with who could start out as complete strangers. Of course, you have to adapt your leadership style with different people and your management style, because otherwise you end up in problems, because the same shoe doesn't fit every single foot. You're gonna have to change. You're gonna have to change it in order to get the best result, as it were.
Absolutely. And I think my children have been my greatest teachers. And I always say mentoring, the reason why I love mentoring isn't because as a mentor, you're the teacher. Mentoring is a two-way cycle.
Oh, it has to be.
Your mentee teaches you and you teach, and it's a sharing partnership. That's why I love mentoring. And I think it's important as well, because that whole thing about different styles of learning as well, like you can give someone a textbook. Very few people will read a textbook and know how to put that into practice. But when you show people, and even one step further, going a step further is like taking them on the journey with you. And like, my favorite word is trailblazing, right? And I think we can all do that. Kate's got a question. I know I said, well, try and stick to less than an hour.
That. But we also said we both like to talk, so here we are.
Well, people are listening, and I'm sure we're adding value. But
Most
Kate's
definitely
got this question, and I think it'd be really nice if you could address it. I do think differentiating management and leadership is problematic, she says.
Okay, that's a good one, actually, Kate. I would tend to agree. When I say when I look at leaders, you are generally you're always managing, whether it's managing people, managing projects, managing strategy. I think sometimes people see leadership as in 100% strategic. You're not really having any engagement with anything. There's nothing you're managing. You're just the vision. You're the vision of the organization. But even then, you're obviously managing your engagement with others. So sometimes people look at management as probably like a second tier below leadership. I see myself as, when I was in the corporate space, I was a leader, because I led, we strategized how we deliver training and everything else. But I also managed. I managed people. I managed expectations. So I don't always differentiate in terms of if you're either a leader or a manager. And I think it's probably old corporate speak that has started to see leadership as, what was it, the 7 effective ways of leadership, whatever it is. But it's, for me, if you're a leader, there's always going to be an aspect of management, because you can't totally segregate both segments. They will have to come together. So as a leader, I will manage multiple things. And I think it's just legacy of old corporate speak, because before it was like management, and that was like the top tier. And now you've got leadership, which I don't know if kind of an American thing, but leadership came into play, and everyone looks at leader. So I don't think there's actually a difference. It's just, for me, it's terminology. So I know some corporations that I work with, they look at, they refer to leaders as managers, and then some others refer to them as leaders. So I don't think there is a difference. And to your point, it can be problematic because people don't understand the actual difference. And then if within your organization you do have a clear difference, and it's very, very key to ensure that it's clearly communicated. But for me, I don't think you can say they are separate entities. There's always going to be overlap.
I agree
I
with
hope
you.
that makes sense, Kate.
Yeah, Kate, let us know.
You are the comms guru, so please.
Yeah, and I think completely agree with you. You can't take leadership out of management, and you can't take management out of leadership. But the traditional model is very much the middle person is the manager, whose job
Yes.
is to make people get the job done. And then leadership is very much, vision, the strategy side of things. But I do think, like, to manage people, you have to be a leader.
And you also need to
Yes.
have a vision as well, because like when I said, people look at leader, they're like, oh, you're the visionary. When I was leading a team, I had a vision for what I wanted for the team, and then I had to find ways to implement it, which involved, like I said earlier, a bit of rocking the boat to change certain things up. But I had a clear vision of how I wanted my team to deliver, how I wanted them to engage with the business, how I wanted us to be perceived by the business. So it wasn't just about managing budget and managing the delivery of training or managing the vendors. It was very much, for me anyway, it was that vision piece. It was the strategic piece as well. So yeah, I don't think they're totally different strands. I think they're very much intertwined.
I was just thinking about Kate's point and thinking what you said earlier, and I think in the corporate world anyway, because the hierarchies, you always get managers as the middle
Yeah.
people, and then you have leadership, and leadership was always very remote from the junior level, and however, I think things are changing now, and the world is moving in a way that I think there's less of a focus on hierarchy and more
Mm,
about, okay, how close is leadership to serving people and
mm,
setting that example. And I've always found environments where I've worked where the culture is very much about leadership getting their hands dirty have been those kind of environments where it's thriving, and where
yes.
you've got leadership just sits on their desk and they
Closed
don't,
door.
yeah, closed door, they don't really interact, they don't communicate. I think that was just the way people were trained in the old years ago. The other thing I was thinking about is that the conflict arises where when you are able to manage and lead yourself, and then you have to
Mm,
manage and lead a team.
totally different.
And I call that transition point.
Mm,
And it becomes blatantly obvious when someone hasn't had the right support, the mentoring, the development, the learning to transition. And I have worked, like even last year, working with a number of women, and I could see like they're trying to build teams, but they struggle because they're only used to working on
leading
their own.
themselves.
And
And
there's a lot, and this is where the legacy program for me came about, because an element of that is understanding your people. But how can you understand your people? You don't even understand yourself.
Yeah.
To develop others, you have to look within, and that's how I look at it. And I think this is where the conflict rises, because there are so many people that are great doers, but they can't lead others because they don't understand that it requires time, patience, and a lot of investment in building those relationships.
And that is key. And one thing that I always, before, when I meet with the companies, before I kick off the corporates leadership program, it's the people who you are selecting. Are they open to be in leadership stroke managerial positions? Because some people will say to you, I want to progress, but I don't really want to manage a team. And that's fine. That's absolutely fine. There has to be an awareness that not everyone actually wants to manage a team. And that is absolutely fine within your career progression. But those who do, it's, I would say, even before they make that transition into managing a team, that's where I come in. That's my little sweet spot, because I help to equip them before they get into that space. Because I always say to the organizations, people generally don't leave organizations, they leave bad managers or bad leaders. So before you promote them into that space, let's give them the tools that they need. And my program is a 5-month program. Let's give them the tools that they need to set them up for success, or the best chances of success, as opposed to throwing them in and hoping it works. Because within that time, you could see a kind of a spike in your attrition rate, simply because they don't know how to manage people. They don't know how to lead. They're losing some other good people along the way, and those people will then leave. So that's why I'm very passionate about first level leaders, because it can be very daunting if you've never done it before. And I'd rather ensure that companies invest before that transition is made, because then you're setting them up for success, or you give them better chances of success, as well as the teams that they may be leading. Because at some point, it could be that they are actually leading former teammates, and then you have to manage that change in dynamics. So we used to be buddies at the water cooler before, gossiping or, just having jokes, and now I'm managing you. So dynamics are going to change, but you have to be comfortable in managing that transition from being colleagues to now having to manage down to your former colleagues. So we cover a whole array of the challenges of being a first level leader, which is fun, but it's also to ensure that, for me, the basis is building that inclusive and equitable environment for the team, and understanding why it's essential for the growth and development of the team. We have gone so over.
I know. Not my fault. Again, I delegated.
I'm innocent, Gov. I'm innocent, honestly. It wasn't me.
I delegated for a reason.
I know. I mean, when we're, I think, like you said, we've got so much in common. But when we're in flow, we are in flow. But yes, it has been. Yeah, it's been good. It's been very, very good. I've loved talking with you.
And it's been such a huge learning process. Like, having these conversations is part of our learning and our growth. And only yesterday, I've come back from Turkey, and I was talking to a group of women. And it's really interesting that today, when I looked on LinkedIn, there was a message from a group talking about Asian women, and how culturally, because Asian women it's not acceptable to be a certain way. And that's the reason why a lot of Asian women feel discouraged to go for leadership roles. And, I sat there this morning thinking, right, that's it. That's going to be another program I deliver online. Because clearly there's a need out there. And I just feel like I feel so strongly. So before we kind of end today, I want you to share, what are you most passionate about?
Oh, I'm most passionate about ensuring that all entry talent and rising talent have equitable opportunities for progress. So we're building cultures within organizations whereby the organization now starts to meet you where you are in order to get you to where you can be, as opposed to they're only, it's like, entry level frameworks, development frameworks, they're very generic. We don't all have the same experiences. And that's where the equity comes in. I may need more help in this area because of, my lack of social exposure. I may need more help in this area because this is an alien culture to me. Meet me where I am to ensure that I both realize and achieve my full potential whilst I'm with your organization. So for me, the underlying basis is equitable opportunities for progress. And then that will also help to build inclusive cultures, because I think there's so much talent that is being frustrated out of great career trajectories. And that breaks my heart. So I want to make sure that within organizations, everyone has equitable opportunities for progress. Because once you have that, you're going to have that inclusivity that is lacking in a lot of organizations, and we stop having reports upon reports produced and we're not getting anywhere. We will start seeing the progress, and that's what I want. That's my passion, and that's why I do what I do.
Fantastic. And I hope everyone's listening, especially those organizations out there that need someone like Lola to help them, because I think organizations do worry about reaching out and getting the right person in. And I think you have such a warm way of working. And I don't feel that in any way that you come across as though, people need to worry about not having the right systems in place, because sometimes I found that there's a real uncomfortability around these things, especially around EDI. I've done my best to make people realize and feel like, it's okay. We're all for someone to reach out to you and say, you know what, Lola, we want to bring you on board, or to say to me, Munwara, we want to bring you on board. I see that as an opportunity to make change.
Oh,
And
of
and
course.
we,
And it's a case of, I think when they do that, it's like, okay, you've made the first step. Okay, you've made the first step. And I always say it's never about judgment. It's never about, oh my gosh, you've got such a long way to go. It's a journey. But if you're reaching out to me saying that, listen, I've seen what you do, can we have a conversation? You're making the first step. So your intention is already there. And all I do is I build upon that. And we build upon it together. So myself and my clients, we build upon it together. It is a partnership. I think it's very important to have that relationship where they know there is no judgment. I'm here to support you in achieving the objectives that you have set. I'm a kind of no nonsense type of person. It's like, okay, let's get to business. Let's roll up the sleeves and let's get this going. But one thing, that luckily has always been consistent in all my deliveries and all my workshops is, one, they're very high impact. I bring the fun, because no one's going to learn in a very depressing environment. So I bring the fun, and I want people to feel as though they're both equipped and empowered to make that change within the organization themselves. So we all have to be change makers. We all have to be change makers.
Absolutely. And I love that you use the word journey. And I have to say, when I'm working with a CEO or I'm working with a director of a charity, any third sector organization, anywhere, any leader, and I want to help them grow, it's because it gives me joy to be part of that journey of growth.
Yeah.
That's what nourishes my soul. So I really get what you're saying. And I'm going to say goodbye to everybody who's joined us today, because I know Lola will have many more things to say.
We need to cut.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, it's just been really, really nice talking to you. And the more I spoke to you tonight, it has felt like I know you even more. Like,
I know it doesn't sound. We said this when we, before we went live, that it feels like I've known you. There wasn't even, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I just feel like I know you. But passions align, passions align. So do backgrounds actually. But yeah, so it's been a wonderful conversation. And thank you for inviting me. I really have enjoyed it.
thank you for coming, and keep doing the amazing stuff you're doing, the change that you're making. And I'm sure like our paths will cross, and I hope that we will work together in future.
Oh, that'd be amazing. That'd be absolutely amazing. Would love that to bits. Would love that to bits. But yes, no, most definitely. Thank you for having me, and thank you, ladies, for questions, comments, and everything else. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful, rest of Sunday, whatever's left of it. Best wishes.
Bye-bye.